Give two craps about the actual state of American women today. What they care about is that you can kill a baby in utero. Beyond that, they have absolutely no use for women. That's where I want to start today, after what I've witnessed this weekend around Kamala Harris and her absurd media behavior. Now, currently the media is enjoying a round of girl boss moments. Have you checked anything on the web today? What a girl boss Kamala Harris is, as a result of her decision to appear on the podcast Call Her Daddy, which normally traffics in shows entitled, quote, F me with a dildo, end quote, not kidding. But this weekend decided that presidential politics may in fact be their thing. It isn't. It isn't. It was an utter fail. I'm so, I don't know shit about sports. Sorry, I don't know anything about sports. As you guys know, occasionally sports becomes a news story and I'll talk about it. But I'm very quick to disclose I don't know anything about it. And I certainly would never be the person purporting to do an important interview of a sports figure who's in the center of some sports storm, as opposed to just my role over here as a random commentator when it becomes news. That's the position this person was in. You played with fire and you got burned, and you misled and you failed at an important moment in presidential history. There's so much to go through. The particular moment that's being celebrated this morning had Kamala Harris responding in this interview to a barb from Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It was akin to the childless cat lady remarks from J.D. Vance, which were years ago, right? He made those comments 3 or 4 years ago. They got brought up again against him once he was named as Trump's running mate. And for some reason, Huckabee Sanders thought it might be a great idea to double down on them. She said last month at a town hall the following.
As my eyes fill with tears, my sweet daughter reaches up, pats my shoulder, and says, "It's okay, Mommy. One day you can be pretty too." So my kids keep me humble. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris doesn't have anything keeping her humble.
She didn't need that last line. She didn't need it. It was dumb politics. And I love Huckabee Sanders, but this is stupid for Republicans to keep doing this. Okay, so Harris goes on this podcast and the host brought it up, and here was Kamala Harris's response.
I don't think she understands that there are a whole lot of women out here who, one, are not aspiring to be humble.
Oh, Lord.
2, a whole lot of women out here who have a lot of love in their life, family in their life, and children in their life. And I think it's really important for women to lift each other up. I have 2 beautiful children, Cole and Ella, who call me Mamala. We have a very modern family. My husband's ex-wife is a friend of mine, and I love those kids to death. And family comes in many forms, and I think that increasingly, all of us understand that, this is not the 1950s anymore. Families come in all kinds of shapes and forms.
All right. First of all, it is absurd for anyone on Team Trump to be ripping on someone else for not being humble enough. Okay? This just was not a smart attack. Second, did the GOP not learn its lesson with the J.D. Vance comments and the blowback, which he's still laboring under? I understand what he was trying to say. We've talked about it on this show. He gave me his first interview. We went through it all. But there's no question that this is not a smart line of attack that the right should double and triple down on. You heard when Tucker came on this show, he expressed that he felt bad. He said, as a cable news host, I think I egged him into that, and I was kind of snarky, and I wish I hadn't, and I'm sorry for it. Stop doubling and tripling down on this dumb attack, okay? Not having biological kids is not disqualifying for someone who wants to hold higher office, nor does any presidential candidate have a lot of humility. Okay, it would be great if they could find some. It would be great. But anyway, for the love of God, Kamala Harris has enough real and deeply disturbing personality traits and policies to actually attack her on. This one is not necessary. But as for the way Kamala Harris actually responded to this, it's not a girl boss moment. It wasn't empowering. It was off-putting. Everyone who runs for office should be looking for a little humility, for a little opportunity to be humble. All the leaders should. We don't need God-complex presidents thinking they alone know best when it comes to free speech, Madam Vice President, or forever wars, right? She has virtually no governing experience. She was a lifelong prosecutor who then spent 3.5 years in the vice presidency doing ribbon-cutting events. Her one actual responsibility was the border, and we all know how that went. But had she actually spent the last term governing and making decisions for this country, I think she would likely realize that humility might actually be a good thing, not something she needs to eschew just to sound tough. We're not looking to be humble. Okay. I mean, honestly, to me, it was like the exact same thing as I eat no for breakfast, that routine she's been giving. It shows a fragile ego. She's insecure. She doesn't have the goods, and she knows we know. We do know, Kamala. We all see it. Well, today that story's everywhere. It's everywhere. The media's loving this comeback she gave. You go, girl. So the system is working exactly as it has been lately, and as the Democrats think it should. The Democratic presidential candidate avoids virtually all real questions in the press, right? Like she's in a new form of the Presidential Protection Program. She goes instead on some sex podcast where she knows she will get no tough questions. She gets digitally filleted by the host. And then the sycophant media gets off on the performance, telling us all how good it was. It is the presidential equivalent of a visit to the Amsterdam red light district or the 1970s Times Square back alleys. They all need a shower, and we are all feeling grosser for having heard about or witnessed it in the first place. Okay. Here's the real problem, though. Not one of those media enablers has reported on the story that we may be about to put a woman abuser in the White House as, quote, first gentleman. Doug Emhoff, the husband of Kamala Harris, has been accused of assaulting his ex-girlfriend not 12 years ago, in front of a red carpet gala on the street in France in 2012, right before he met Kamala Harris. And not a single one of these same guffawing media outlets has written one word about it. We discussed this in detail on Friday's show. Now, we understand that Ms. Harris sat for this particular interview the day prior to the Daily Mail report breaking the news of Emhoff's alleged assault. Fair enough. The host did not know. But Kamala Harris almost certainly did. And listen to her go on that podcast and talk about what a champion of women Harris is.
We still have so far to go on the issue of child sexual assault. Just like in a previous time, the issue of domestic violence. People didn't talk about domestic violence. And part of it was this really warped idea that, well, what happens in the home is none of our business. But if it happened on the street, it would be our business if we witnessed it on the street. And so the point being that abuse of anyone is something we should all take seriously, as opposed to saying it's not our business. It's something that we have to agree should not happen, and whatever resources and whatever attention we can put into reducing the likelihood that it happens is worthwhile.
If it happened on the street, it would be our business. You heard it from her directly. If it happened on the street, it's our business. Abuse of anyone is something we should all take seriously, as opposed to saying it's not our business. And whatever attention we can put into reducing the likelihood that it happens is worthwhile. Then do that, Madam Vice President, do that. Because this did allegedly happen on the street, so it is our business by your rule. This is something some of us are taking seriously, as is your rule. And we here at the MK Show, as well as at the Daily Mail, which broke this story, are putting attention into reducing the likelihood that it happens to someone else by reporting on the story, madam. Why won't you follow your own rules? We've gotten no comment from you at all. An unknown campaign spokesperson gave a benign statement to Semaphore saying the report is untrue. Any suggestion that Mr. Emhoff would have or has ever hit a woman is false. Totally generic and doesn't respond to the vast majority of the report. You've sat idly by and you've celebrated as this media has made a hero out of your husband, knowing about the nanny. And if the second Daily Mail report is true, knowing that he paid her $80,000 to stay silent after she lost their baby, which she blames on him. You watched as they said he has single-handedly redefined masculinity, that he's a wife guy. That, quote, supporting women is just something he's always done. What a crock. We played you the Jen Psaki stuff on Friday. Another so-called journalist actually had Doug Emhoff sit for an interview after the Daily Mail story broke. What a get. Great. Maybe he'll ask him, does anyone give a damn about domestic violence? Maybe this guy does. Abuse of a woman in public on the street? Kamala Harris says we have to pay attention to that kind of thing. Here's Tim Miller of The Bulwark, an entity whose very existence is due to their deep loathing of one thing, Donald Trump.
I don't mind taking shit. I actually kind of like it and revel in it. Like, I don't mind if some jerk is whatever attacking me. I don't mind the harassment. It's fine. I don't like it when my kid gets brought into it, and I do sometimes react poorly. And that has happened over the past few months, and that happens to you all the time. I mean, your kids are getting targeted. I see Ella getting targeted. I just kind of wonder how you process that, how you deal with it.
Well, first of all, sorry that what you're going through.
Oh, come on. It's nothing compared to what
it's we got to call it all out. I mean, look, you're a journalist. We believe in a free press. We need strong journalists out there calling it out. And for you guys to be able to do your job, you can't do it being threatened and being targeted. And that's part of their game too. It's all a distraction. So the attacks on me personally, the kids, Kamala, look, it's not fun, especially when it hits the kids. But right now we have a mission, and that mission is to win this election.
Okay. They were talking about attacks, including attacks on his daughter, Ella, for whom I have nothing but sympathy. I feel bad for this young woman. Can you imagine having your dad cheat on your mom with your nanny and then create a love child who then gets miscarried, according to the Daily Mail, allegedly because of something your dad did? That's the claim. What we know is true, because he's admitted it, is he knocked up the nanny while he was married to this child's mother. So that's disgusting. But here he'd like to play the victim. It's not nice to make fun of that child or any of the children. We haven't done that here on this show. But I am interested in what happened to the nanny, and I'm very interested in what happened to the girlfriend on the street, Kamala, in Cannes, France, less than 2 years before you started up with this guy. And for Tim Miller to not ask him one question about the allegation that he's a woman beater is a disgusting failure. It is yet another dereliction of journalistic duty. And he does consider himself a journalist now, amazingly. I don't even care if you do. I don't care if you consider yourself a journalist, a sex podcast host, whatever. You get this guy sitting in front of you, you ask the question that is in the news that he's now responded to through a campaign spokesperson to ask whether he actually hit his girlfriend in 2012 outside of a red carpet gala in Cannes, France. And whether there will ever be tape of such a thing, or if that person is not actually, wasn't the subject of his abuse, why won't he put her forward? Can we expect to hear from her? Because you guys out there know, if you were wrongly accused of hitting or punching a girlfriend and you didn't do it, you would go to her and say, please tell the world this is a lie. Where is she? Why hasn't he? Why didn't you ask Tim Miller? This media is too busy celebrating her girl boss moment to talk about the fact that on her arm, she may be escorting a woman abuser right into the Oval. Easter egg hunt, Christmas tree party, all of that. Great. How many women are going to get to go and have Doug Emhoff put their arm around them if she becomes president at the White House Christmas party and wonder whether he used that same arm to smack a girlfriend across the face because she allegedly placed her hand on the shoulder of a valet to get a cab? I mean, this is just, we've fallen so far, I can barely hold on. I'm holding on by my fingertips to see a press corps that I recognize as vigorous and honest and not owned by anyone in power. As for the rest of the Harris interview on this sex podcast, which I realize does other things besides sex, but not many. I've never listened to this thing a day in my life. My team has pulled sound bites, which I think might be too filthy for us to actually play. But I gave you the feel for what she does. The young host admits at the top, to her credit, that she's not the one who should be asking questions about the economy, immigration, or fracking. Good. I appreciate that. And there might be a lane for her to ask questions. But in this position, a month out from the election, one has to stop and ask oneself, why did she come to me? Am I being used? And do I really want to be this person's stooge? Instead, what appears to have happened here was the host decided to make the entire interview about the area she claims to know best, women, women's rights. All right, I'm listening. Do you? Like you say you talk about it all the time. Actually, what that turned out to mean, not a surprise, given that this is an obvious leftist, is one thing: abortion. Abortion, abortion, and more abortion. And sure enough, that is what we got. We got the now oft-repeated lie that Georgia's abortion laws caused a young mother of one son to die as she was trying to abort her twins. In fact, she died of malpractice when, after taking the abortion drug, she was forced to wait too long for a perfectly legal D&C by her Georgia doctors. Her family should sue over that. We got a lie from Kamala Harris that the GOP wants to take away women's birth control, which is not true. We got the host seemingly upset that Trump has called Ms. Harris names in the past, like dumb. The question was, how does that affect you when he calls you those names? Well, gee, how do you think it affects Trump to be called a sexual predator by Kamala Harris, a fraudster, a criminal, Hitler by her top surrogates and supporters? Might that warrant a response of, she's crazy, she's fake, she's dumb, which are the adjectives the host brought up. You might want to contextualize your question so that the audience has some idea that these didn't come out of nowhere. The host seemed particularly bothered by Trump telling women at a rally in Pennsylvania not long ago that he would be their protector if he's returned to the Oval Office. Harris was allowed to rail on how that was a lie because he hand-selected the 3 judges who participated in overturning Roe versus Wade in the Dobbs opinion. And that was exactly what this host wanted to hear. I wonder if the host cares anything about issues affecting women other than abortion. Like, does she care that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have changed Title IX with the stroke of their pen? And they've allowed boys and men's to take over women's sports and redefined womanhood to begin with? And that Trump has promised to reverse that? That Trump has promised to remove men and boys from women's private spaces where they are being hurt all the time, raped in prisons, sexually assaulted in bathrooms and locker rooms, having their medals stolen, not to mention their innocence. Do you care? Or is it all about killing the baby in utero? I just wonder, because as a woman, I care about a lot of things. I care about where the country is on abortion rights. I think it's an interesting topic. But I really care about what happens to the women once they are born and live their lives. Here's, you engage in an industry of filth. From what I read, here's terms you can understand it in. The young girls don't want a bunch of penises coming at them in their locker room, okay? I know you love that. That's the business that you're in, talking about all the times you've been on the receiving end of one, but I don't want it happening to my 13-year-old while she's trying to play soccer. You get that? Do you get it? Try to keep up, because there are issues affecting women outside of the only one you give a shit about. Does this person know anything about the anti-sex trafficking law that Trump passed? Does she know he's promised to seriously increase sentencing for those who abuse women and girls down at the border as part of his immigration policies? How about the fact that we had no wars under Trump, as opposed to under the Biden-Harris regime, where we expressed and showed weakness right off the bat with the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, leading many experts have said directly to Putin feeling emboldened and invading Ukraine, not to mention what happened in Israel. In Ukraine, at least 10,000 civilians have died, including 3,000 women and almost 600 children. Does she care about that? Could those women consider themselves better protected when Trump was in office? Not to mention the 1,200 dead in Israel as of today, the 1-year mark, including almost 300 women and 29 children. And those who died in the retaliatory campaign in Gaza, and that goes on beyond. All of this is so infuriating. What bothers me is the hypocrisy of it. The hypocrisy of it. They want you to end that podcast thinking Kamala Harris is the one who will protect women, who cares about women. And none of these issues is even brought up. The whole thing is designed to make Trump the devil and Harris the savior of women's rights. And it's infuriating. 4 years of crushing interest rates, runaway inflation, and reckless government spending. And who is paying the price? You are. You might have bills stacking up, debt collectors on your back, and you might be barely able to keep food on the table. Done with Debt can be a way out. They have developed new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. They can go head to head with